Set I'm free, y'all. Got the victory. Set I'm free, y'all. Got the victory. Set I'm free, y'all. Victory. Yes, I am. Set I'm free, y'all. Got the victory. Set I'm free, y'all. Got the victory. Set I'm free, y'all. Yes, I am.
Well, good morning, good morning, good morning. And this is the day the Lord has made, and we're here to rejoice and be glad in it. Welcome to Hope TV. I'm E. Dewey Smith. I'm one of our chief hope dealers here, and I am excited that you've tuned in to this segment, the first one of the year, the first segment of our podcast called A Deeper Dive. So excited you're here. So excited you're here. It means the world to me that, listen, we made it to another year. We started Hope TV in March of 2020 as a response to the pandemic, trying to figure out how could we present entertaining faith to our people in a virtual space due to being able to worship publicly because of the pandemic and because we decided to prioritize safety and public health. And so we started Hope TV in March of 2020, and A Deeper Dive was one of the original shows that was in our programming. And here we are, almost 22 months later, and we're still here with The Deeper Dive. We made it to the first Friday of 2022. What a blessing. I mean, first Friday, 2022, and I'm excited. We made it to January the 7th, 2022, and what a blessing it is to have you here with us. So good to have you here with us this morning. Tom Lyon from Victorville, California. Blessings to you, Tom. Hope all is well with you out on the West Coast, and we appreciate your support. Really, really blessed to have you here with us. I'm thankful for each of you. So thankful for your encouragement and for being a part of the Hope TV family. So everybody who's here, blessings to you today. Tina Williams, Fort Valley, Georgia, blessings to you. Glad to have you here with us today. So excited to be here with us for A Deeper Dive. It's very, very I'm just so excited. I really am. Just thankful to be alive and thankful to have this wonderful privilege of sharing with you, and you. So very, very excited that you're here with us. And so if you're watching, why don't you drop us a line and let us know the city, the state, and the country from whence you're viewing. We take your viewership very, very seriously here at Hope TV, and we appreciate you. The demographics are very important to us. because it helps us to determine and even to research and watch what's going on in various parts of the world. So we will be sure to speak to those issues that are unique to our particular demographics and geographical region. So, so excited that you're here with us and listen. And if you're here, whether it's Apple TV, Roku, Twitch, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, YouTube, whether it's Twitter, Instagram Live, the E. Dewey Smith website, the House of Hope Atlanta website, or the Hope TV website, however you're viewing, thank you for your viewership, tuning into our network. And if you've tuned in today through a platform that will allow you to either subscribe, like, comment, or share, won't you please consider doing that now? Subscribe, like, comment, or share. Every time you subscribe, you help us to grow our base, which empowers us significantly to leverage our base to talk with other content providers. Our vision here is to be a 24-hour network. And listen, we made strides to that end. And your subscriptions help us because every time you subscribe, it really brings more value and validation to the platform. And we want to bring the best content providers whose content aligns with our core values here, and we want to bring entertaining faith that empowers us in every area, spiritually, physically, emotionally, psychologically. We want to have content for the entire family and for every demographic and every generation. And our church is a 5-generational church. And of course, we want our network to be reflective of that. And we're trying to do that. So when you subscribe, that helps us significantly. You also can get notifications as to when content is uploaded. If you so desire, you can get a notification and let you know every time content has been added or a program has commenced. So please subscribe, subscribe. Also, want you to hit that like button. That like button is very, very important. It helps us with our algorithms. Morning to you, Vida. Facebook really tightened their algorithm significantly during the election of 2020, and we lost a lot of space and a lot of viewers. How they tighten the algorithm, I don't know why, but they change it periodically. And what it does when they do that, it restricts your access so different people can't see you. But the like button it helps to loosen it. We found that out, which helps us to actually meet more people who may not have heard about us. As the algorithm loosens, we're able to go to be in contact with others. So that like button helps us with our engagements and with the algorithm. So keep hitting that like button. It gets Facebook's attention. It helps us to expand and to go higher. So subscribe, like, comments. Comments are important because they also help us with the algorithms, with the data, with engagements. So the comments help us with our engagements, and in these kind of live settings like we are today, it helps me and helps our presenters to, if you have questions, we can come back and answer them, whether it's live or pre-recorded. But when it's live, a live session like this is very, very helpful because it lets me know if I need to clarify something else, if I misspoke and need to repeat something. And sometimes just your comments and your genius helps to crystallize and hammer home a point. So sometimes we end up sharing together, and it's better when we do it together. So the comments are very, very important. And last but not least, that share button. Listen, that share button is so powerful because the share button makes it easy on everybody. We don't have to worry about the loosening of the algorithms. If you share it with people, then we're doing what the algorithms can't do. So become a Hope TV ambassador. Hit that share button. If there's content that you think will be appealing to somebody in your sphere of influence, and hit that share button. It's going to be very, 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 very helpful. And I certainly would appreciate you for all you are doing. And I really, really would appreciate you for all that you're doing. I want to get right today into our deeper dive. Deeper dive is something different. When we were talking about programming, when we started Absolute Tina, when we started Hope TV, we were talking about the various types of content that have been all kind of unique to me, I guess, in my ministry and who I am, I think, as a teacher. and the types of people that listen to us. We want to make sure that we scratch the itch, so to speak. And there are a lot of people who want to go further and a little deep in some of the studies, and and we try to be substantive in all of our presentations. But one thing that I love, and I've loved it since I was a teenage preacher, this whole idea of theology. And one of the things that we don't hear a lot about now, sometimes faith is more about the pragmatic and more about, well, thank you. Appreciate that, Tina. More about self help. And so I want to engage in something. Well, since why you on it, Tina? Thank you. My album is out. Dropped in October of last year called God Period. It was named one of the top 50 albums on for Billboard for the year 2021, which is absolutely incredible. This is my first solo project. And what makes this unique is that Billboard, they go from November to November of each year to look at the top albums. And my album was released in October. And I made the top 50 albums on gospel albums of Billboard in just 1 month of being, being released, which lets you know the type of views and the type of coverage and purchases that went forth into it. So what a blessing. So it's God period. So it's still a brand new album, so to speak. And I wasn't going to mention it today, but it's still a lot of people are buying it. So go ahead and get it, so it can be on the Billboard list in December of this year. Because it's still a brand new album. I'm going to release some new music later on this year, but that album is still going very strong. It's called God Period. You can get it. And the single off that album is called Your Presence is a Gift. It's been on the charts. Gee, man, it was made the top 100. It was in the top 100 on radio probably the first month. And it's been out now. As a matter of fact, it's been out 10 months today. It was released, the single was released March the 7th. I'm a brand new artist. And then it went to the top 70, top 75. Good morning to you, Geneva from Florida. Then it went to top 50. It was in top 50 for several months. Then it made the top 30. And then the top 20. And then it's been in the top 20 for the past 2 months. And it's probably going to be in the top 10 next week when we'll hear about it. So y'all keep your fingers crossed and keep praying. It'll probably be in top 10 next week on Gospel Radio. Your presence is a gift. So thanks for the reminder, Tina. I'm excited about that. And yeah, it's been on Billboard. It's number 12, 2 consecutive weeks. I think it. So God has been awesome. God has been just amazing. I'm thankful. So I believe it's going to go in the top 10 next week. So. And by faith, I believe it's going to hit number 1. I really do. You could have told me that 10 months ago today when we released it. But good morning to you, Tasha. But I really feel it's going to be the number 1 gospel song on airplay. So it's not even hit iHeart yet. So on all the radio ones, praise Atlanta, Washington D.C., Charlotte, North Carolina, Richmond, Virginia, Detroit, New York. It's playing all over the country. And once it hits the top 10. We think it's going to hit not top 10 next week. So people played it for Christmas as a Christmas song. So to God be the glory. So y'all keep praying for it. Call your radio announcers and have them to play Your Presence is a Gift. Today is a 10-month anniversary of it being released. And we're looking forward to it making the top 10 next week. So to God be the glory. Your Presence is a Gift. Now let me talk back about Deeper Dive right quick. Deeper Dive. You're right. Well, thank you, Tina. God bless you. I wasn't thinking about it. I was so excited about the lesson, but thanks for the reminder. We got to keep pushing it because it's helping to get it out there, and we do want people to be aware of it. So Deeper Dive is, we try to have good content in all that we do, and that's why I love what Hope TV does. It's good stuff. Every program is solid and substantive. If you just take the time to watch, we have great content here. That's uplifting, and we're looking forward to bringing on even more programming. But a Deeper Dive was unique because one of the things that we don't talk a lot about is I want to push people a little further to go a little deeper. And that's why we came up with the Deeper Dive podcast idea to kind of engage theology, because a lot of stuff now is more practical and not really. Thank you. That's right. I believe it in Jesus' name. Thank you, Tasha. I believe it. I never, my mind couldn't be spread that wide, but now I believe it. I can see it not being number one. I can see that in the next month or so. I can see it. I can now see it based upon what we're hearing. I'm doing interviews almost every day with radio announcers, and they just fall in love with the song. So to God be the glory. As a matter of fact, this past Sunday, DJ Nice is his name. D Nice, who's one of the biggest DJs in the whole world. He had something called Club Quarantine. He played my song on this Sunday night, and when that happened, it just once DJ Nice, he's probably one of the largest DJs in the world. And when he played the song, it just poof. So to God be the glory. So I'm speaking, it's gonna be number one. But thank you for that. Thanks for that. I agree with you on that. Um, so a deeper dive gives us an opportunity to challenge our minds to think a little deeper about things. Theology. I want to do some theology. I'm somewhat of a public theologian in the public square, and sometimes we don't get a chance to just think about theological things. And I want to just be able to challenge that, to challenge some ideas of scholars and philosophers so we can have good theology. Sometimes people they want the Bible, and the Bible is the foundation, but good theology is important. How do we see doctrine, theology, doctrine? Because good theology helps to shape our idea. Praise God, Sean. I appreciate you. Glad to have you here with us, and I receive that in Jesus' name. So good theology is important. And that's why I love a deeper dive. I really do. And we've been talking about God. I don't know. For some reason, the last few years, I've just been focused on. It's as if God is saying, too often your faith is about you. A lot of what we do in faith is about us being blessed, us getting stuff. So a lot of times our preaching, our music, our ministry is geared toward us, meeting our needs, making sure we get what we need. And while that has a part of it, seems like sometimes we have lessened our intensity. I receive it, Geneva. I receive it. I receive it. That you talk about would be mind blowing. We lessen our focus on God, and we become less Christ centered. We become more me centered and us centered and we centered, what we need and blessings and provisions. And again, nothing is wrong with that, but our focus should not be we in us. We should want to see God as Isaiah saw God, high and lifted up. And so we're trying to convey a higher view of God. Because I think sometimes because we have a lower view of God, I think, is what causes a lot of our issues. A lot of the stresses, a lot of what we experience, a lot of the craziness in the world is because we've lowered God and we've lowered the view of God. I think if we have a higher view of God, we can inevitably have a higher view of ourselves and then a higher view of each other. When we realize that we're image bearers to bear the image of God. And so as we lift that view, and so I want to talk about God. We've been focusing really on God. That's what my album is called, God, period. When you listen to my whole album, every song is about God. You won't hear a whole lot about us getting stuff in that whole. It's about. I'm trying to think about. It's about trying to point people to God. Christ. So it's God. And I tried to make sure every song will point you to God, whether it's the song "Anyhow," God who loves us anyhow. God, your presence is a gift. He that dwelleth in the secret place, for all you've done. The whole album is God. So that's why some songs didn't make this album, because I wanted everything with this to be God focused. And to that end, today I want to talk about something that's a little deep. Not gonna hold you long. I want to break this thing down so we can really chew it. I want to talk about proofs of the existence of God, and I promise I'm not gonna hold you long. It's just really two thoughts I want to kind of get across. We're gonna let two theologians kind of wrestle and talk to us this morning. The 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 problem that people are now dealing with just the whole idea of God. People have issues reconciling God in a world of evil. It's called, it's called theodicy. Theodicy, 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 which is really a vindication or a question of the righteousness or even the existence of God in the world where there's evil. Theodicy. Well, if that's really a God, why is all this craziness? If that's really God, what about coronavirus and the Delta variant and Omicron? That's really God. How in the world is not now they have something called Flurona that's coming out? 800,000 Americans have died. Where is God in all this? And so that's the question. Crime rates across the world, man. I mean, whether it's in Atlanta, whether it's in Southern California, some of our major urban cities, crime is just. I mean, what has happened? I mean, pandemic. It's almost as if people have lost their minds. Where is God? Civil unrest. Yesterday was the 1 year anniversary of the what I call the insurrection. Insurrectionists attacked the Capitol. First time the Capitol has been penetrated. I mean, you had Confederate flags going around the U.S. Capitol. I mean, my goodness. I mean, that level of just frustration that people have, distrust of government. Oh, my goodness. Political division. I mean, racism seems almost like the relitigation of the Civil War. Pharmaceutical sales, from all the different types of vaccinations and the questions and the anti-vaxxers and the anti-maskers and all this stuff. It just makes us wonder what in the world is going on. Where is God? That's a theodicy. 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 So it's a vindication of the goodness or even the existence of God or the presence of God. Many of us have heard of theodicy questions. We ask them. We may not even recognize what theodicy is. Uh, if you've ever asked this question, why do bad things happen to good people? That's really a question of theodicy. Why do bad things happen to good people and seemingly sometimes good things happen to people who are bad? That's a question of theodicy. And so what has happened in our times have made people ask these questions. It's a vindication of the righteousness or even the existence of God. Or it's a question about that in the presence of evil. So I want to talk about the proofs for existence because I think it bolsters our belief and our faith in God. And there's a guy whose name was Anselm of Canterbury. And that's, of course, Canterbury is the Church of England, Canterbury. And Anselm of Canterbury posited something in the 11th century, around 1079, something, maybe 1090. He gave a definition of God that I want to talk about today. I think it's significant. I want y'all to go in deep. I'm not going to go long with you today, but I want to hit this because I think it's thoughtful. Here's how Anselm described or defined God. Anselm said that God is that than which no greater thing can be thought. God is that which no greater thing can be thought. Let's ponder that for a second. So God is that than which no greater thing can be thought. That's Anselm of Canterbury. God is that than which no greater thing. So here's what Anselm was saying. What can you think of that's greater than God? Think about that. So if you can think of what's the greatest thing that you can think of, let me put it this way. So if the greatest thing that you can think of is God, and there's nothing greater, there's no greater thought than God, then the greatest thing that you can think of must be God. Interesting. So God is that than which no greater thing can be thought. Now, I think that's ironic because now in these postmodern times, we're hearing a whole lot more references to the universe. You put things out in the universe gives back to you. The universe, the universe. Live in the universe. We hear a lot about the universe. And a lot of people are using the word universe as interchangeable with God. Or some people use the word universe to the elimination of God. So some people are more comfortable saying universe than they are God. Some people believe in the universe, but they don't believe in God. And some of us, the universe, they put it out in the universe. Um, there is a universe. The universe, we know that scientifically, there is a universe. We're within the universe. So, but for me and for Anselm, the question that we have to ask yourself is, now listen carefully, is there anything greater, is there any greater thought for you than the universe? So for me, as powerful and as expansive as the universe is, I believe in the universe. I believe in the power of the universe. I believe in the possibilities of the universe. Scientifically, there is a universe. That's unquestioned. However, for me, I can think of something greater. For me, there's something greater than the universe. If the universe is here, for me, God is here. So for me, the universe can't be God because there's something greater that for me, that I can think of than God. For me, it's God and then the universe. For some, it's the universe, then God. I believe God is the creator of the universe, which means that when you have the universe as your thought, that's something greater than that. But for God, absolute. How the universe come to be? You got it, Adrian. So for me, God is that than which no greater thing can be thought. So when I think about the universe, as great as it is, for me, there's something greater. That's a greater thought for me than the universe, and that's God. So when I think of the universe, that's not the greatest thought I can have. Something greater than the universe is God. But when I think of God, for me and for Anselm of Canterbury, there is no greater thing that can be thought. For me, and whatever you can think of that's greater than God, then that's your God. That's right, Gertrude. But for me, that's nothing greater than God. That's no greater thought. Um, I'm curious as to how you would answer that question. Um, what do you think of that's greater than universe? Was it greater than God? And if I could, and good morning to the YouTube, Marie Antoinette, Ronald, Christina, Lenore, um, Jamie, um, and Jerry Poor. Blessings to you, and D Queen. Blessings to you. Um, so for me, uh, Anselm says that God is that than which no greater thing can be thought. Now, if you can think of something that's greater than God, then for you, that's your God. Whatever's the greatest thought that you have. So for me, when I read, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, I can think of no greater thought than God. So for me, let me keep it in context with Anselm. So for Anselm, God is that than which no greater thing can be thought. Now he says this further, which is powerful. So if God does not exist, this is hypothetical. So if God does not exist, the fact that you think so it's hypothetically, if God does not exist, the idea of God remains. The idea of God remains. So Anselm said, well, even if God didn't exist, the idea of God remains. That's deep. So if God does not exist, the idea of God exists. Listen, y'all, please, y'all stay with me now. I'm not gonna hold you long, but I want y'all to hear this. So if God does not exist, the idea of God remains. So even if God did not exist, and we know God does, but hypothetically, if God didn't exist, the idea of God does. But here was what is even blessing, but the reality of God will be absent. So if God did not exist, the idea of God would remain, but the reality of God will be absent. So if God does not exist, the idea remains, but the reality is absent. But what Anselm says is, no, God is not just an idea. The reality of God is greater than the idea of God. Next slide. The next slide, please. It's going to get heavy. It's going to get heavy. Next slide, please. And so this thing is just, it's pretty heavy here, right? So here's what Anselm says that further. Now, are y'all with me so far? So what God is that which no great thing can be thought. If God does not exist, the idea of God does, but the reality of God would not, would be absent. But here's what Anselm says. But the reality of God is greater than the idea of God. This feels like my psychology class last semester. I'm sorry, Moses. I told you this is deep. This is a deeper dive. I'm gonna push y'all, okay? So this is the reality of God. The reality of God. Can we be forgiven? Yes, we can be forgiven. So the reality of God is greater than the idea of God. Woo! You can have an idea of God, but don't believe in the reality of God. Oh, for generations, people have been talking about God. Even when the atheist says there is no God, they had to talk about the idea of God. So even for the atheist who struggles and have come to the conclusion that there is no God, even God is so powerful that the atheist had to struggle with the idea of God. Did you hear what I just said? I just said something. Even for the atheist who does not believe there is a God, has had to struggle with the idea of God. That's how powerful God is. If you even don't believe in God, that's your right. But I'm so expansive, I'm so powerful that you've had to struggle with the idea of God. So even if you don't think I'm real, you had to struggle with the idea. You've had to think about me in idea, even if you don't believe in my reality. Woo! That's how powerful God is. You ain't got to believe in me. You don't have to believe I exist, but you've had to struggle with the idea of me. You've had to ponder my existence, even if you don't believe that is legitimate. Yes, that's good, James. Love it. To not believe in God creates a conversation to talk about God. Isn't that, James, don't you make me shout, James boy. Even if, James boy, even if I say I don't believe in God, I could not come to that conclusion without, first of all, thinking about a conversation and having an idea about it. Yes. Ronald says that every measurement can be extended. To measure God is to nullify God. Lord have mercy. So even for the folks who have come to the conclusion that there is no God, have had to have conversations and thoughts and struggle with the idea of God. You can't even conclude that there is not a God unless you had to struggle with the idea that there is one. That's why the scripture says the fool that said in his heart, there is no God. To come to the conclusion that there is no God means you had to struggle with to have conversations about the idea of God. Y'all got that? Once we got it before I move on. We're going to go heavy. We're going to go deeper for a minute now. Right? So Anselm says God is that than which no greater thing can be thought. Right? If God does not exist, the idea of God remains, yet the reality of God is absent. So for the atheists, they don't believe God there's a God, but they've had to deal with the idea of God. Even for the atheists, the reality for them is absent. The reality of God, so for the atheists, the reality of God is absent, but the idea of God isn't. I said it again. So for the atheist, the reality of God is absent, but the idea of God remains. So even for the person who says there is no God, they may dismiss the reality of God, but they can't miss the idea of God. In so much that they call themselves atheistic against God. That's what atheism. Theism comes from the word theos, meaning God. Theistic. You got monotheistic, the belief in one God. Polytheistic, the belief in many gods. Pantheistic, the belief that God is everywhere. Atheistic, against God. So even when I say I'm an atheist, I've got to include the name God in my title. Even if I say I don't believe in God, the fact that I'm an atheist, I'm including God's name. I'm putting A as so the atheism, to negate, A negates to theism. I'm against atheism and, atheism, monotheism, polytheism, pantheism, atheism. So atheism, not believer, not a believer, not a believer in God. But even when you describe yourself as an atheist, you can't even describe yourself without including his name. Oh God, don't y'all, let me say it again. So even for the person who says they're an atheist, they even can't declare atheism without including his name, or to put his name at the suffix, the end of atheism. That's prefix is what goes before the suffix is what's at the end of a word. Like, y'all got me? Like mono is the prefix, theism suffix, one God. Atheism, A would be the suffix, the prefix, theism, the suffix, prefix, suffix. So atheism, A prefix, theism suffix. So even for the atheist, they've got to include God's name or the thought of God. Even you can't have atheism without having theos. So even in atheism is the idea of God. Even for the atheist has to imply or struggle with the idea of God. Even the person who says there is no God has to in their title include the name God. Whew. You say you're against God, but got to put God's name, got to put God. You got A against God, which means you talking about me, even if you don't believe him. Don't y'all make me wrong. Don't y'all make me wrong, man. Could that be what Jesus? Every knee must bow, every tongue must come. You got to call the reality of God. James, boy, you own something. You messing with me this morning. So for the atheist, Lord have mercy, the reality of God is Alpha Omega is revealed in atheism. You got to consider God even for the atheist. So for the atheist, the reality of God is absent. But even for the atheist, the idea of God remains. You with me? Now let me go to the second slide. I'm almost finished because this right here, this gets me excited, y'all. Y'all hit the share button now. Now, so for the atheists, they say there is no reality of God, but they do struggle. They do acknowledge the idea of God. Blessings to you, James. Appreciate you for sharing. Now, but here's what I want to share with you and I, brothers and sisters. So for the atheist, the reality of God is not there, but the idea of God is there. But for Anselm, the reality of God is greater than the idea of God. For the atheist, the idea of God is present when the reality of God is not. But for Anselm of Canterbury, the reality of God is even greater than the idea of God. See the atheists, they can accept the idea of God. But those of us who believe in God, the reality of God is bigger than the idea of God. The atheist struggles with the idea of God. You and I believe in the reality of God. Oh, the atheist struggles with the idea, but you and I believe in the reality. You with me? Now let me keep pushing a little further. I'm going to let y'all go in a minute. So if God is that than which no greater thing can be thought, if God is that than which no greater thing can be thought, like I just told you, what can you think of that's greater than God? So for the people, and I want y'all to get angry people with the universe. But I talk to a lot of my friends, the universe. I see it a lot on social media, the universe. I just watch it. I don't try to say too much. But people, I speak to the universe. The universe speaks to. I get a problem. I just get concerned when I see people talking to the universe. And don't get me wrong, the universe has its language, the laws of nature. I get that. The universe, evaporation, condensation. The universe has its language. I get it. The universe speaks with natural law, and I get that. But I don't pray to the universe because the universe for me is not. That's something. That's something greater. That's something greater for me than the universe, and that's God. So the universe can't be God because there's a greater thought for me. I can think of something beyond the universe, but I can't think of nothing beyond God. When I try to think what's beyond God, I can't think of nothing greater. I can think of something, the earth. I can think of something beyond the earth. Constellations, I can think of something greater than the constellation. The universe, I can think beyond the stratosphere, the hemisphere, the teliosphere. I can think something greater than that. But when I start at God, what do you start? What's the thought? So if God is that than which no greater thing can be thought, Anselm says the idea of God must lead to accepting the reality of God. So Anselm says, here's what Anselm says. So if God is that than which no greater thing can be thought, that means the idea of God must lead to accepting the reality of God. Talk, Gertrude. And that otherwise, the mere idea of God. So here's what Anselm says. It's heavy. It's deep. It's kind of deep now. I hope y'all stay with me. He says, if God is that than which no other greater thing can be thought, then the idea of God must lead to accepting the reality of God, and that otherwise the mere idea of God is the greater thing which can be thought. So here's what Anselm says. Anselm says, I'm gonna break it down for you. If God is that of which no other great thing can be thought, that means the idea of God. Anselm says, then that means if I accept the idea of God, then that might lead me to accepting the reality of God. Because can I think of anything greater than the idea of God? So if the idea of God is the greatest thing that can be thought, then that might lead me to accepting the reality of God. I hope y'all with me here. Are y'all with me? Are y'all with me here? So if the idea of God, stop that, Sean. The universe didn't wake me up this morning. Don't y'all start this. This is not church, y'all. This is supposed to be a deeper dive. And Sean and all Gertrude and James, boy, y'all being messy. Y'all being messy this morning. Y'all being messy. And James Braithwaite and Ronald Thomas, y'all being messy. Y'all being messy now. We supposed to be we supposed to be thinking, and y'all trying to make me shout. Y'all stop it. We supposed to be. This is a deeper dive. This ain't morning to do a church service. Y'all stop it. Woo! Universe didn't wake me up this morning. even for the atheists. Lord have mercy. So if the idea of God, so even for the atheists, what can you think of that's greater than the idea of God? So even if you thought of the idea of God, that's the greatest thing that you could think of. Now that's heavy. So Anselm almost says the very fact that the atheist struggles with the idea of God means the idea of God is the greatest thing they can think about. Did y'all hear what I just said? I'm trying to break down Anselm of Canterbury. This is from 1097 AD. So this is what that's almost what's that? You know how to say almost 1,000 years ago. We still talking about Anselm of Canterbury. So here's what Anselm says: if the atheist thinks about the idea of God, then what's greater than the idea of God? Because for the atheist, he says, because if that's the greatest thing they can think of, then the idea of God may lead to the reality of God for them, because they can't think of anything greater. But for us, the reality of God is greater than the idea of God. Lord have mercy. All right. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. The idea of God is the greatest thing for the atheist, which means there's nothing greater they can think of. Because the atheist says there is no God. So what created everything else? So is it the universe? Is it natural science? But the fact that they think about the idea. But for you and I, we not only believe in the idea of God. For us, the reality of God is greater than the idea of God. Now let me give you one thing just to let these two theologians talk, and I'm gonna let y'all go. This is another thought. Next slide, please, and I'm gonna let y'all go. This is Guanilo. Guanilo, he came about in the 12th century. So they really argue their positions. He didn't like Anselm's definition of God, that than which no greater thing can be thought. He thought that was kind of insufficient. He was also a monk, and he didn't like that definition of God. Here's what Guanilo says. Guanilo says he really responds to Anselm of Canterbury, and what he said was this. He says, just because you have the idea of something does not guarantee that it exists. Now that's heavy. Anselm says the mere idea of something, whether it's a perfect island or a God, does not guarantee its existence. So he didn't want to leave God from the perspective of God as just an idea. Oh, but this is heavy. That's Guanilo. That's a great question, James. James asked the question, Do the atheists believe there's anything greater? That's the question. Some believe in the Big Bang or evolution, or things just appeared, or creationism. So if the atheist does not believe in in that's a question James asked on YouTube. Does the atheist believe in anything greater than the idea of God? That's a great question. I don't think they believe in anything that is greater than the idea of God. I believe they eliminate that. And I think because if you don't believe there's something greater than God, to me, because if you do believe there's something greater than God, then that will be your God. I think they believe in something that's less than the idea of God. Science and things just evolve. That's what faith. You got it. For me, when you just think about nature and science and creation, so this is what they believe in. So what Juanito says is just because they believe it, that's an idea. Because what they believe. Some people believe that there was belief that you can find this perfect island inside the ocean. That's where the whole phrase "Long Island" comes from. I didn't know this, but they believe that there's an island, a perfect island inside the ocean that couldn't be found. Right? They call it Long Island, a perfect island with all types of resources. So Juanito said, just because you got an idea, you can have an idea of something, but the idea doesn't mean it exists. Which I like. I like that. Which is a great thought. That just because you have an idea that something exists, just because you have, oh here it is, just because you have an idea of something does not guarantee that it exists. So Anselm says God is that which no greater thing can be thought. Like it. Anselm says, yeah, but the idea, having the mere idea of something doesn't mean that it exists, which is true. So what do you believe about this, preacher? First of all, I believe whenever we talk about God, it's hard to define. There's no one word to describe God. The more I learn about God, I get smarter and dumb at the same time. But God is more than an idea for me. Woo! God is real. God is real. What do you do? Can you put God in a laboratory? I can't. Is there any crucible for experimentation and investigation? I can't. Can you quantify God from the five senses? I can't. Is there a chemistry class or biology class that can help you dissect God? That isn't. Well, why do you believe in God? Why do you believe in God beyond the idea? I believe in God because there have been so many times in my life. I talk about nature tells me about it. How the universe was intelligently designed. I'll talk more about it next week. Whew. The placement of the sun, closeness to us. If the sun was any closer, it'll burn us up. If it was just an inch further away, we'd freeze to death. Who knew how to perfectly place the sun? Who made the sun rotates on its axis? Who developed the moon out of rock and let it rotate around the sun to give us night and day? How did stars get bulbs that don't have LED, that are not LED bulbs, that never need to be repaired or replaced? Who painted this sky blue without a skyscraper or a ladder? Who gave the clouds their whiteness and the grass its greenness? Who decided what clothes the lilies would wear? Hmm? Who who is the beautician for the dandelion? Hmm? Are y'all talking to me here? Who lets the human body inhale oxygen and exhale carbon dioxide? Who can make it rain and let the rain come from the clouds to provide nutrients to the grass, and then let the same water evaporate to go back in the cloud to come back to be? Who recycles the water to keep everything saturated? Who does it? How is 80% of the Earth's surface water? 90% of tomato water. 75% of the human body water. Who does it? I'm just talking about the universe. I'm just talking about the universe. Who put it? Hmm? Who can make it snow in DC while letting it be 80% in 80 degrees in Turks and Caicos at the same time? I'm just talking about the teleological argument for the existence of God. Who can do it? I'll wait. That's just not the idea of God. But even the idea of God got to give way to the reality of God. But can I take it a step further? I don't have to look at the teleological or the ontological or the cosmological ideas. I'm gonna give you those next week. Cosmological, teleological, ontological. These are all arguments for the existence of God. I'm gonna give you those next week. But I want you to be practical and let y'all go, because I was trying to let y'all go a little earlier. There have been times in my life, forget the science, forget 180 teliospheres in the moon, and forget all that. Okay, the kilometers of, forget that right now, because you might not remember science. I'll talk about the cosmological next week. But let me come. There have been times. Come on, I want to talk to somebody here. The next times you struggle with the idea of God, let me share something with you. There have been times I've been so broken in my life where I couldn't even pray, and I needed to hear from God. I didn't have the ontological argument. I didn't have the teleological argument. I didn't have the cosmological argument. All I had was enough strength to pick up a Bible. I needed to hear from God and didn't know what it looked. Couldn't think of a scripture. And I have simply opened that book, not knowing where the page was going to land. In times in my life, I've opened that book. And when I opened that book, out of all those 66 books, all those chapters and verses, I've opened that book, and exactly what I was going through, exactly what I was facing, the word I needed, I turned the book, and the first thing I saw spoke to the exact situation I was going through at that exact moment, with no preacher, no concordance, no commentary, no YouVersion. What are the chances? And that's happened to me over and over again. Woo! I feel the Holy Ghost. There have been times I was wrestling with a sermon on Saturday night, Everybody who knows me, know me closely, know every time I go to preach, I got 3 sermons in my Bible that I've been working with. 3 of them. Sometimes I can't even figure out. My media team gets so mad at me. Pastor, give me the notes. What's the sermon notes? I don't know. Come on, Pastor. We're trying to put it on the screen. We're trying to get we're trying to put it for the tape ministry. I don't know yet, y'all. And what I want to preach and what I got, I'm struggling. I get there in the pulpit and pull one. And when the service is over, somebody comes to that line with tears in their eyes and say the same thing you spoke of. I was thinking about killing myself last night. I was so low that I couldn't even come to church. But what you spoke of hit my situation. The sermon that I was struggling with, or the idea I may have gotten the night before. I've been working all week. God said, no, that ain't it. God will shift the whole thing the night before and let me go up there with something I'm uncomfortable with. And as soon as I'm finished, somebody's in that line, and said, with tears and broken, you gave me strength to keep going on. Somebody I never knew, somebody I never saw, somebody I never had a conversation with. How does the sermon get changed the night before when I've been working all week on something else? For somebody who I've never had a conversation with to be in the pew at that exact time to come up there and say, what you just said changed my life. Something I was uncomfortable with. Y'all not with me here. I'm not talking about the cosmological, the teleological, the ontological. I'm talking about practicalogically. It ain't even a word, but I just made it up. When the Holy Ghost will speak right then, and nobody but God. The earth tells me, the world tells me, the constellation tells me, but it's so many times in my life I've had one-on-one encounters. I gotta let y'all go because I'm not supposed to be doing this because it's deeper dive. But can I tell y'all why? And I'm finna leave because I feel like running. I gotta run down the street to get this out. I'm gonna go out. I feel like I'm so on fire. I feel like I can run down the street butt naked. That wouldn't be a good sight, but that's how on fire I am right now. It's cold outside. I might just take everything off and run down the street butt naked and calm down when I get off this line. That's how I feel. Let me tell you something how I know about God. The idea of God does not guarantee this existence. But here's how I know God is real. Here's how you should know God is real. The very fact that you and I are in our right minds. The very fact that you ain't in a straitjacket in a room with pads on the wall. With the stuff that you've gone through, some of the stuff you've gone through right now is humanly impossible to have that kind of emotional and mental trauma and still be alive. You can't tell me there is no God. Woo, I feel you, Lord. I don't mean to preach to y'all on this Friday. This is a deeper dive. This ain't church service, but I don't know who I'm talking to today. I don't know who I'm talking to, but I came to tell you something. God is real. God is real. Anselm says God is that thing which no other thing can be thought of, which is the idea of God. But the reality of God is greater than the idea of God. And that's why I lean. I'm grateful for the idea of God. I'm grateful that everybody has a struggle with the idea of God. But for me, the reality of God is greater than the idea of God. The atheist struggles with the idea of God. The believer accepts the reality of God. There are some things I may not know. There are some places I cannot go. But this one thing that I am sure, God is real, for I can feel him in my soul. Yes, God is real. Real in my soul. Real, for he has washed and made me whole. His love for me is just like pure gold. God is real, for I can feel him in my soul. I feel something now. I'm feeling something now. This ain't ontological. This ain't cosmological. This ain't teleological. I feel something right now. Woo. Ain't no, this ain't. It's God. And I want you to know that when the enemy tries to throw all ideas in your head, know this: the reality of God. I'm thankful for the idea of God, but the reality of God is greater than the idea of God. I gotta let y'all go. Ooh. Bless you, Jasmine. Bless you, Jamie. Bless you, Ronald. Bless you, Janice. Bless you, Adrian. Bless you. Bless you. Bless you, get lifted. Bless you, Adrian. I'm letting y'all go. But as we bless you, Bonnie. Do me a favor. It's okay to be challenged with the idea of God. For Anselm, that meant God is that which no other greater thing can be thought. So the idea. But for me, I don't just believe in the idea of God. I believe in the reality of God. God is real. Y'all take care. Y'all be strong and just know God is real. Much love to each of y'all. And as I close this, y'all have a great weekend. I'm gonna be back tonight live for Friday Night Live. I haven't done Friday Night Live in a couple weeks, but I'll be back tonight with Friday Night Live tonight. The first Friday Night Live of the new year. Happy New Year to you, Kendra Castello from Macon, Georgia, from the 478. Blessings, hometown. Let y'all go. Y'all join me tonight. We're gonna laugh tonight with Friday Night Live. I got a great show for y'all tonight, and but no, God is real. As always, if you'll be good to God, God will be good to you. I see y'all in 12 hours. I'll be back here for Friday Night Live tonight, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, January 7, 2022. We're gonna have a great time. We're gonna have some laughter tonight. We'll laugh, and at the same time, giving praises for a real God. Peace and love. See you then.
Said I'm free, y'all. Said I'm